This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to A Sharp Outlook on K4HD Radio and Talk or TV. I am Angela Sharp, your host. Our armchair discussions with industry experts will give you the steps, tools, and information to be successful in business and to prepare you to be your best self. Hello, I'm Angela Sharp, and I'm so glad you're able to join us today. We're going to have a really interesting conversation today about connecting with your cultural roots. And it's really vital to get an understanding, celebrating, and maintaining ties to one's cultural heritage. Through compelling conversations and insightful discussion, we explore the diverse traditions, values, stories, and experiences that shape our identities and connect us to our past and inform our future. It's hard to know where we're going when we don't know where we've come from. And it makes it difficult to make the right decisions or the right choices. But just going back and connecting and getting involved in those cultural things, it gives you a real perspective of what's going on in your life. So I'm glad you're able to join us as we uncover the richness and resilience of cultural roots and examine their profound impact on our lives, families, and communities. We'll hear from an expert and elder, me, and everyday individuals who are actively engaged in preserving and revitalizing their cultures. It's very important to keep your culture and to be able to share that culture. Today, my guest is Vicki Oldman, and she is a highly respected cultural and passionate community leader dedicated to preserving and promoting Indigenous traditions and cultural heritage worldwide. With over 2 decades of experience working in partnership with diverse communities, Vicki possesses a profound understanding of the critical role cultural heritage plays in fostering individual and collective identity, resilience in the face of adversity, and strong social cohesion. Vicki has been an education facilitator, skilled trainer, working in areas like strategic planning, community and organizational development, board development, and team building. And as a consultant, she has provided technical assistance, curriculum writing, and program coordination in both urban and rural environments. She has worked in asset building, Native CDFIs, nonprofit organizational development, train the trainers, communications and coaching, and she is founding and managing partner of Seven Sisters Community Development Group, Seven Sisters CDFI, serving low-income families in Native communities. Owner of the Real Native Roots, Untold Stories, a podcast bringing healing stories to communities and the next generation. And I'll tell you, that is a wonderful program to listen into and to get educated and also enlightened as to how important cultural background and information is. I'd like to invite Vicki to join me so we can begin our conversation. Yate.
Oh, yate. Hello, hello, hello.
It is.
I'm like, I'm arriving
Yes.
with my earrings and my ancestors and my cultural groundness.
Yes, yes. It's so wonderful. It's so wonderful. And it's great. I've been watching your show. And it's I listen to it. And I'll tell you, I just enjoyed every moment of you sharing untold, like the untold stories different things that aren't written in most books. They're stories that are passed down, and those are some of the best stories you ever want to hear. If Hollywood actually wanted to be successful, they'd be trying to tap into some of these stories because they're exciting. They just grasp every emotion that you have within your being, and then they bring it to resolution, and you say, "Whew, now I know what's in my system." And then you have great poems that you always read. Do you have a poem for us today?
I do. And I just want to say, Shahat, thank you so much for bringing me on. I just think um, anytime we can connect with people deeply and share story, that's medicine in itself. And so
Mhm.
I just ask folks, anyone who's listening in here, just to take a deep breath with us before I read the poem. So let's take a
Yes.
deep breath together and exhale. I always like to do that because, I don't know where everyone's coming from, whatever conversation they may have had or what they're sitting with. So,
Mhm.
one of my favorite authors, I love this man. I wish that I met him, but he's already in the spirit world, is
Mhm.
Richard Wagamese, and I'm reading from a book called What Comes from Spirit. He's a great, great writer, and, I love this man.
Mhm.
Okay, so here we go. It starts as, "We all have stories within us. Sometimes we hold them gingerly, sometimes desperately, sometimes as gently as an infant. Hmm. It is only by sharing our stories, by being strong enough to take a risk, both in the telling and in the asking, that we make it possible to know, recognize, and understand each other."
That is true. That is so true.
Mhm.
And sometimes it does take courage to become that vulnerable to share those stories. But, I've gotten to the place where I have to share stories because I know there's someone else walking the same path I've walked.
Mhm.
And if I can help them by sharing my story, I think my life was worth living
Mm.
because someone has learned and gathered some wisdom from maybe my stupid decisions, but it doesn't matter, good, bad, or whatever. It was a choice when we're walking down the path, we turned right instead of left, or we backed up, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's not
And
knowing. Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. And I feel like when you had shared about our learnings, right? I feel like even watching a baby, an infant, that is story watching, right? And as an elder, I receive that acknowledgement. As an elder, when I watch a child, I'm also receiving and learning from them. Like, I feel like sometimes it is important we listen to our elders. And recently, my dad actually was like, we are going back and forth and talking, and he's like, "Listen." And I was like a child. I'm like, "Oh, I'm over talking, Papa. I need to listen." And it's the same thing with a baby, a child. They can scream and yell, like, and they're trying to tell us, "Listen,
Mhm.
I need something, or I need to tell you something." And I feel like even when we're in nature, nature's also telling us that, like, "Listen." So
Mhm.
I think wherever we're at on the spectrum of our life journey, that we are, if we're open, right? If we're open and vulnerable to receive, you
Mhm.
will get the message. You will get the medicine that is needed. And part of that is just being fully present and really listening and not being distracted. And gosh, that's hard these days. There's so much going on and so much
Mhm.
distraction.
A lot of noise. There's a lot of noise out there. Um, and some of the things going on, I refuse to listen to because it's not it's not healthy.
Mhm.
It doesn't promote, you know, positivity. And so, I'm also cautious of what I let into my spirit,
Right.
because even sometimes even people that you have to say, oh, you know, it's been good, but I got to go my route. You need to go the direction that you're going, because it's not my place to try to change your mind. You'll find that out on your own as you keep walking down the journey. But yeah, it's really, really, really important. So, exploring what it means to be native in a modern world, because I noticed recently there's a lot of younger, and I'm so proud of our youth, the younger indigenous um, people they're coming up strong, where maybe I would have been really quiet and feeling my way. They are very vocal now, and they are really speaking um, some things, and I'm so proud of them. And they're picking up the mantle, and they're continuing to, fight the good fight, and they're making the noises and sitting down and at the table and making sure there is a table for them. I mean, the youth is really, really uh, doing some great things. So what does it mean to you?
Mm.
Mhm.
I feel like what it means to me is like our ancestors' prayers are showing up. I think about my grandparents and even my parents, and they've taught me and how I pray to universe, creator, spirit, whatever people use in terms of language. We're always praying for currently, right? We pray for going forward. We pray for our young people. We pray for the generation. We pray that they stay intact and be healthy. So I think that one is one of, in my humble opinion, is my foundational thought is it
Mhm.
prayers are being received. They're happening. They're in motion. And I also think, our young people, they're smart. They listen, they observe, and they're also not afraid, which I love because they're pushing back on like old ideas. And, because science also comes into play in showing evidence. And this is what I love about our indigenous and our cultural ways is that we have known since time memorial what the land does. We
Mhm.
know why we do certain things, what we believe. People thought they were superstitious. And now science is catching up and realizing, hey, there's some validity here with smudging. There's some validity here with, internal trauma. So when I
Mhm.
think of, because I remember my ancestors, like my grandparents and my mother, my aunties, when I was caring, they would always say to me, be careful what you think, be careful what you put in your mind, be careful with how you move and how much, but don't be lazy, because they
Mhm.
understood trauma. They didn't have those words, but they knew that if I was hurting and crying and aching, the baby is going to feel that. And the baby is already getting that sense. So I feel like young people are also learning about somatic work, about trauma, historical trauma, societal trauma,
Mhm.
and they're flipping the
It's
narrative.
different.
They're not
Mhm.
owning being victims anymore and saying, "Hey, we have the medicine, and that's our songs, our prayers,
Mhm.
our
Mhm.
language." And I love it when I see young people like on Instagram or on TikTok, and they're practicing the language. And I
Mhm.
feel like I don't know how old you are, but you're probably younger than me.
I don't think
But
so.
when I was speaking and try to speak my language, I would get shamed. Like, it was
Mhm.
interesting, like,
Mhm.
the elders, some of my relatives would, get on me, they would tease me, and then that would make me feel discouraged to try practicing. And so I make it a point to really try to encourage our people. When you see our young people trying, encourage them, show
Yeah.
them gently, don't shame them. And
Mhm.
I think I'm like, I'm so happy for our young people. And I also think though they need to practice more listening skills though.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping they're listening. But like I say, I mean, just recently, they had a canoe journey on the Clackamas River out here in Oregon. It's like 130 miles. They paddled that whole way, and I was like,
Wow.
"Whoa!" and nobody said, "Oh, you guys, you get up, you go do this." They decided themselves. And
Mm,
I've been seeing a lot of, because I'm in the Seattle area, but now closer to Portland and near the water, the ocean, the rivers. And I see a lot of the journeys being done by different tribes so that the youth can find out this is what your ancestors endured so
mm,
that you could be here.
yeah.
And it's just incredible, to see that. And that's why I love, some of the stories that you have on your podcast. You know, why did you decide to do that
Mhm.
podcast?
So the story is this is right before COVID, maybe a year, 2018. Uh, a friend of mine on Instagram would always see me post little stories on there. And then
Mhm.
he inboxed me, he goes, "You should do a podcast." And honestly, I had no clue. I wasn't listening to any podcast then. So then I researched. I'm like, what? What am I going to talk about? And because my stories back then would just be little journeys of, me trying something new or experimenting or commenting on, a dish or whatever. And so I really it wouldn't let go of me. When creator drops the seed in you of an idea, you can't let it go. Like your mind goes back to it and you're like,
Mhm.
there's something here. And so it wouldn't leave me. And I'm like, okay, I'm hearing you, spirit, right? So I started researching and then I really sat with what am I going to talk about? And then it landed. I was like, Vicky, you love stories. You love when your mom tells you her story about going to the dump yard when she was little to find toys. And she tells a story because she says her youngest sister would go way down in the dump yard to get the best toys. And one time that happened, and the aunts and uncles are like, "Let's go. We're going to Dairy Queen or something like that." So they all go, and there's a lot of kids, and so they didn't realize my aunt wasn't in there. So they're like they realized she's not here, so they go back, and she's standing there crying, but with a really cool doll. But everybody's eating their ice cream. And so those kind of stories, I was like, oh my God. And I'm like, Mom, tell me that story again. And so that I was like, those are untold stories. Those are stories
Mhm.
that she would not share, and my grandmother as well. I would say, Grandma, tell me the story about that rock again. So then I was like, okay, I know untold stories, but what's the first half of this podcast? So the goal really was to interview. I don't even like to use the word interview. It's connect and tell me story. Tell me a moment in time in your life that was hard or that was special or that gave you insight. And and I also really believe that stories heal. So once that all came together, I bought the equipment, and this is what I was going to do was that I was going to pack the equipment, and all my business travels, I was going to stay a day later or come early and then find local stories from community people. And then COVID happened.
Mhm. Oh,
So
yeah.
I still launched it. I still did it, and it was really good. And so now I try to think about, while I'm in the community, can I get a story or at least meet somebody to, schedule a story connection going forward? And I will just say it's been such a joy. I
Mhm.
love it, and it's a hobby. It's a love project. So I'm enjoying it. I do have some ideas about what I might wanna do with it later, but for now, I'm just, doing it when I can because I
Mhm.
have my day job.
Which just keeps you pretty busy too. Running the
Yes,
CDSI, that's, I mean, that takes us way back to Oista
I know.
and all of the things. I mean, and that's how I remember you. You were always so involved in, training and training the trainers and sharing knowledge and information, always out there sharing knowledge and doing capacity building, building up communities. So they now had the tools, they now had the skills, they now had the understanding of how to navigate, in this, uh, capitalistic, society. I mean, it's just yeah, you have done some wonderful work. And
Aw. I give you that all to, honestly, I give that to spirit because I feel like we're a vessel. So when we're
Mhm.
talking and feeling and expressing, like it's information coming through, coming out. And I also give credit to all my mentors, people who have spent time to shape and encourage me and also push me. And I feel like my lived experience, but also my connection with my community, which is the community people, the practitioners, leaders who saw something in me to give me enough time and encouragement to continue to do this work so I can reciprocate that back. I feel like if we don't follow and live through our values, that then things don't fully align or it makes it harder in our life. And I try really hard to live my life through values and looking at community, looking at reciprocity, intuition, where I really feel I try to listen to what is being said and really try to follow that than to be in my head, because our brain wants to make sense. And sometimes things we may not make sense of it. And so that's where we tap into our body. And I feel
Mhm.
like that's cultural. Like I think about my grandparents and particularly my grandparents and how I watch them make decisions and how they move about their life. I I see them when I was little, I would see them and how they would move. And even like healers watching them, and it's all like intuitive,
Mhm.
it's really staying grounded. And if we're not grounded and we're shaky and you know, um it makes work relationships harder in our life.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like we end up we did like you said, we have a path that was designed,
Mhm.
and this and creator has fixed us, made us, tested us, prepared us to walk this specific path. And getting off of that path, you're going to have, conflict. And it's going to make, like you said, it's going to make things harder because that's not the road you're supposed to be on. That's not the work you're supposed to be doing. And some of us, we took on work that it paid the bills, but it wasn't our purpose.
Mhm.
And so as I tell young people now, you're going to be spending an awful lot of years working. Make sure it's something that gives you joy,
Yeah.
makes you fulfilled, and actually, like I said, serves others other than yourself. And because you kind of want to leave footprints.
Mm.
You want to leave footprints so that someone's going to remember your name. They're going to remember what you did. They're going to remember a story you told. They're going to remember a poem that was written or a painting that was painted. They're going to remember because first off, it when you're in the right realm and you're walking and spirit is guiding you, when you speak, there's an energy that comes from you
Mhm.
that blesses those people so that they now become energized to do some of the very same things. And yeah, I'm just listening. It just seems like, that was something that was just in your DNA to be out there, working with communities, bringing things together, bringing skills together, and now bringing the culture together and telling stories about, who we are
Mm.
as people. And I believe in culture because, like I said, it took me a while to um, accept it because of just some of the things that I experienced or I saw when I was growing up, and then moving into a corporate environment, being so strict and me being the only woman there in finance and tech, and them actually not wanting me to be there, but I didn't care because I was going to be who I was going to be, and I just let them know you're not that important. You are replaceable. In fact, all of us are. So get off your high horse and let's sit down. Let's work through some, solutions here. And because I'm just here for my paycheck. I'm not trying to be friends. So let's just get to work done. I mean, I really had to put on a hard exterior to be working in an environment when it was just all men
Mm.
and men that did not want women in their industry. the things that I heard, and I spoke up. I remember there was this one VP, and so disrespectful. He would go down the halls and wink at the women, and they hated it. So I waited until the CEO flew in from New York. Now this was a Fortune 10 corporation. He flew in for a meeting, and I saw them walking down the hall. I thought, I'm going to break this habit of his. So when they were walking towards me, and before I went past, I winked. Oh man, I'm telling you, everybody was just flustered, and I was like, well, bet you won't do that again. And you know what? Never did it again. Sometimes you have to understand that's not how you're supposed to behave towards others, regardless of what their color is or regardless of what their culture is. Everyone deserves respect mine. And yeah, I fought a few fights.
I love that. I put my hand up because that means I was like, you mirrored what you did was you mirrored back to him. Look at this behavior. Look at what you're
It was
doing.
the only way to make him stop, and he was just so embarrassed because then the guy looked at him, and I was just standing there looking, and
I love it.
I know he wanted to fire me. How you going to fire me from winking? That's what you've been doing. And so didn't do it again. Never did it again. And it's like, it's just one of those things, and just little things like that I remember of just taking that path and what I had to do. But I have freedom now. I feel free. And so now I want to give back information and things like that. But, from your extensive experience of working with diverse communities, what do you see as some of the most pressing challenges they face and in maintaining their unique cultural traditions in today's rapidly changing and increasingly globalized world? Do you see any challenges?
So, I work directly. So I work in two spaces now, like with organizations directly or with intermediaries that give resources to these organizations.
Mhm.
And so what I'm finding, particularly with our organizations, like our Native, Indigenous nonprofits, particularly,
Yeah.
that, you know, the way the way they run an organization, which is a nonprofit 501(c)(3) status, was not designed in a cultural lens.
Mhm.
By all means, it was not set up that way with us in mind. And so we have been constantly like code talking, right? Trying to figure out how a system that is so boxy and structured and not with the cultural lens and how to navigate that. And some have you like they're getting through it, but it's still rigid because and you think about our culture, we're
Mhm.
about relationships.
Right.
We're not about scarcity. So you think about nonprofit sector, it's about scarcity. Like
Mhm.
have enough income, we got to bring in money, and like it's this scarcity mindset. But when you think from an indigenous lens, there's no such thing. We have
Mm-mm.
plenty. There's plenty here, and how we share generously is also different, which is a different mindset in how a
Totally.
nonprofit provides services. Right? It's
Mhm.
like you have to
Mhm.
have certain requirements. You have to have a certain amount of income. So they have these strict guidelines, and when you think about how our mindset is, it's no wonder it's really tricky. So I
Yeah.
find like, us trying to noodle through the waffle and how to design. But I'm seeing now more and more organizations, which I love, they are rewriting their policies. They're rewriting what they feel is true to their, community people, but their employers.
Mhm.
So, for example, having time for ceremony, you know, having time for like for self-care, whether that means going to sweat or something like that. Excuse me, not having a sense of urgency, looking at their time and how they do the work differently. not a straight, Monday through Friday from 8 to 5.
Mhm.
And I think they're experimenting. And then they're also experimenting with structures of their leadership in terms of their board of directors, and
Mhm.
trying to look more of a flat structure, and looking at, here are anchors, or here are councils from different places that we need to work with, versus here are the 501c3 kind of board status. So I'm
Mhm.
seeing folks experimenting, they're prototyping and trying things out now, because they know what's in place has been challenging. And
Oh,
it
yeah. Oh, gosh. And believe me, I'm I'm quite aware. Being someone who's worked in finance and then worked in tech, which is all rigid, all
Mhm.
boxed in, no ways of maybe changing it or going outside the box or this, that, and the other. I can see how it conflicts with a community mindset, because you're right. The way they're written, there no communities involved. It's like, okay, these are your funds. This is what we expect you to do. This is what we want you to report. This is what we're going to end up reimbursing. This is what we're not going to pay for. I mean, just, all of these different things, instead of saying, these are your needs. However, you feel you need to administer this award so that you meet your goals and objectives, as long as the funds are spent on your project. That's all that's necessary. But to narrow it down to, you need to see 2 people. I want how many people? And, counting the numbers of people that actually got served and those things. How about caring more about the quality of service instead of how many numbers you got? And that's it's almost like you dehumanize even the projects that you're trying to fund. And and I know you have to have rules, I know you have to have regulations, but you can have humanity and sensitivity in those rules. I mean, I've got a lot of people lined up. We're going to do whatever we can to change the corporate environment,
Right?
because
So one thought came to my mind recently, and that is looking at the nonprofit arm. And
Mhm.
when you think about our communities before these systems were in place, we were in smaller community hubs, right? Like
Right.
family pods, and then, clan pods, name pods.
Yeah.
And when we were living in that format, we helped each other. So if people went hunting, people come back and then they disseminate, to everyone, not just,
Everything.
to the family. They thought about the whole family. Uh, so back then, I feel like we we were providing these needs and services and gaps that we don't have as much now. Like, I know communities they're trying to bring that, like, build that connection. It's the connection of the community to support and help one
Mhm.
another. And what
Mhm.
happened is, the nonprofit, comes into this system like, well, there's a need, because people were starting to isolate and not provide service or help with one another. So that disconnect, it's a strategy, right? A disconnect of putting us in different places, cutting off resources. And so now
Mhm.
we have the nonprofit sector trying to fill that, when in essence we can really do that for each other. But part of that is us reconnecting, us coming back into community, us
Right.
working and helping one another. So then, the nonprofit, doesn't need to be in that place. It's like it's filling that gap. And what had happened though is the disconnect. And
Mhm.
so what I'm noticing, particularly now, is that a lot of organizers and community are realizing we're trying to be placed in a space of fear, of being isolated and not being in community. And we need to go back to being in community. And that's
Right.
why our ceremonies are so important, because that's when we're there, we're quiet, we're praying, we're connected, we're in a whole different mindset. We're not thinking about work, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then the last thing I'll just say about the intermediaries, I've been working with a lot of foundations and funders. There's a lot of interest in the past 6 years of them wanting to do work in our communities. And at the very beginning, I asked them, is your board on board? Do you have a plan? Is this just
Mhm.
a moment, or is this a long-term strategy? You don't have any of these things in place, or have you all did some cultural training about our people in the community? If you're not
Right.
doing any of these things, then you got some work to do, because
Mhm.
we don't want people coming in for a moment because it seems sexy or it's a requirement, like a check off, and then they leave after a couple of years.
Right.
So anyway, there is interest, and there's also hesitation because they're like, we know we've done harm, but we don't know what to do.
Mhm.
So that's an interesting, shift that I've seen when I knew you back then to in the past 6 years of, philanthropy funders are wanting to, but they're not sure. And they also know that they've done harm and they don't want to do any more harm, but they still got a long ways to go.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, if and I'm just going to put this out there, if you're wanting to do something in the communities, then you need to bring people from the community to sit at the table to plan, to help you with the planning, to help you with the design of the
Yep.
program you're trying to do, to help you with finding out what really is needed. You've decided without even talking to someone what the need is, instead of bringing people to the table, coming up with a whole plan together, that now you can be successful. But if you don't know anything about the culture, you know nothing about the traditions, you know nothing about the historical trauma, you know nothing about the economics that's there. I mean, you know nothing about the hierarchy. You don't know anything about it. You don't know about the community. And then you want to come in and and uh and help, because yes, there has been harm. There's been a lot of harm. But then what you need to do is go to the leaders of those communities and get information. And better yet, find out exactly what's needed, and then find out who would be best to facilitate that program from your community. How about that?
Yeah.
We've got to sit at the table, or you're not going to be successful. So bring us to the table, not after you've made decisions, but at the beginning of the thought process. And then it would be a lot more successful. I know that. I know that. You got to,
Yep.
you got to change your mindset of how you've been doing business. If you want to do something somewhere, you need to bring the people in that you want to do the work with. Uh, because you're not dealing with children, you're dealing with adults. So they have ideas, they have thoughts, and they know what works. Um, I've been there. I've been through all of that.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
And I'll also say it's also rewarding when an organization, whether it's our native group or the non-native organizations, make headway. Even the small wins are like, yay, particularly in this environment. And, I just have to hand it to our people. Like, we do so much with so little, and we are so freaking amazing and creative. We have
Mhm.
we have challenges, and we're still working through it. And I have hope. And as I said earlier, I believe some of these prayers are, some of the things that are happening is because of the prayers that our
Yes. Yes.
grandparents said
Yes.
for us, or great
Yeah.
grandparents.
I mean, we're just, a continuation of what the ancestors designed many, many years ago, and we're just carrying it on. Sometimes you don't know why you're thinking a thought, but it's like you hear something, and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's right. That's what I really need to do. And it just like you're just continuing the work that was started. And it's something that's just totally outside of the normal education programs and different things like that. It's just so different, so different. In what specific ways does cultural education contribute to fostering a strong sense of identity, belonging, and self-esteem? Because there's some youth that still seem, I mean, just from what I'm reading and things, they don't seem to be connected to their cultural traditions, and they don't have an identity. They're struggling with trying to get identity. Can you think of just some ways um, to get connected and be able to have that sense of identity and belonging?
I think honestly, it really has to start with their desire. We talk about the word vulnerability, and it's vulnerability in both places in like reaching out, but also for individuals in the respective communities to also reach out to see like there's a need here. And I found out recently here in Albuquerque, there's a program where they were teaching young people how to butcher. And anyway, my mom knew that person. And so she goes, I'm going to go over there. He told me to come to go eat. So she goes with him and come to find they hired somebody to teach him how to butcher, but he was really late. And my mom is a master butcher. She's 75 years old. Boy, they gave her the knife and she was there teaching. She didn't even expect to be teaching. Um, but sometimes I feel like those kind of opportunities are like, I was like, Mom, you should get involved. You should go there because she's retired. She lives with me. And, I'm like, Mom, you should do that. She's like, I can't do it. And I'm like, yes, you just did. You butchered her sheep for everybody. And they were and the young people were just so intrigued, and she was talking about why you can't do, because they had the sheep tied up for a while and it was getting hot, and you're supposed to do this early in the morning, talking
Mhm.
about the science of it. And then anyway, so that's an example of like there are things in our backyard that we don't even know about programs and people who are there to help. And part of it is taking the first step. I think we as individuals too, like I have two young men, my boys, 27 and 23, and I do my part to try to like say something in Navajo to them, or send maybe a video about someone who's talking about maybe the mai, the coyote, and where it goes. I
Mhm.
tell them those things, but what's important is repetition. They need to hear it. They need to practice it. Learning a song, practicing your language, even if it's one or two words.
Mhm.
Putting that, because your body, you're in your DNA, and we just have to practice. And I think there's so much content out there. It's amazing. You
Oh,
cannot
yeah.
say you don't know. It's right at our fingertips.
Mhm.
But the best, I think, is finding people in your community, finding programs that do the learning, the lived experience, like the butchering sheep, right? I recently found out there's somebody who does rug weaving, and
Oh.
I'm learning, and I'm like, I want to take that
Mhm.
class so I can sharpen my skills. So I think being in the arts is like, as Indigenous people, art and music is like in our DNA.
It's in there.
Tapping into that because it's healing, and you just don't know what's gonna come out of that.
Oh, I tell you, I took a vacation years ago. I was going to bring my mother, but she got ill and wasn't able to travel, but I spent 2 weeks there at Navajo and Hopi, and then I went over to New Mexico, and oh my gosh, the rugs are just incredible. Oh my goodness! And then I, got a lot of turquoise and silver, and and I love the blue corn flour and
Mhm.
making bread from it and cornbread from it, and the beans. And I recently was looking for choke cherries, and and it's like, oh my goodness, it was just it's just incredible. Right now a lot of the tribes have their website where you can take lessons, language
Mhm.
lessons online. So yeah, the youth can those that don't know the language can learn the language. A lot of the elders have gone in and actually written a book if they have them on Amazon, that they can get the uh, books that they can take the lessons, but then they actually have someone actually doing the enunciation and all of that stuff. So they can learn the language if they don't have someone who's speaking it, on a regular basis at home, so they can, capture it. But so they have opportunities now, and in I think in some of the schools they're teaching language also, so that they don't lose, the language and part of the culture and stuff like that.
Yeah, when you're saying that, it made me think about like when I grew up, right? My parents were a part of the relocation. They got pulled away. My mom, I think when she was 7, got pulled from her home and was placed in Shamawa, Oregon. And her history was really rough. It was not pretty. It was rough.
Mhm.
Her mom
Mhm.
died when she was like 7,
Mhm.
really young. So and my dad, his was so different. He was very cultural. He grew up in a very culturally grounded home, and he got placed in Oregon, not Oregon, Utah, Ogden, when he was more like I think in 10th grade, where he started first grade. He was placed in
Mhm.
10th grade. Anyway, the point of what I'm making here is like I remember when I was little. I remember my mom saying, you're learning English. It's important because she would get beaten, so those are her stories. And
Mhm.
then I'm the next generation, and I realized I spoke pretty good Navajo when I was growing up, but then when I went away to college and I don't practice it, it got really choppy.
Mhm.
Trying to like practice it again with my mom. And again, it's like coming back to practice. And at one point I would blame, like, well, you guys, like blaming my parents, you guys need
Mhm.
to practice with us. If you guys talk to us in Navajo, we'd be like, expert. And then I realize now I'm at the age where I'm like, I have no one to blame but myself. I can learn it. There's tools there. I just have to
Mhm.
practice it and, practice with my parents, and there's still hope. So I leave that with anyone who is wants to learn the language. There's hope. There are people out there who are willing to teach. It's just up to us to make that decision to incorporate the language back into our day to day, and the songs and the art and the music and the food, as you were saying, like the
Oh God, yeah.
food is an art, it's medicine. And,
Mhm.
so there's so much around us. We have no excuse.
Right. And the thing is, what after all these years I've been here in the earth, I realize, especially native indigenous peoples, they understand not only the earth, but the gifts from the earth, the roots, the plants, the trees, the leaves, the different parts of plants and things, the healing that comes from just the nature that's out there, not rushing to some doctor to start taking those pharmaceuticals, but there's medicine in, you know, a particular bean or in a particular root or in a particular plant and in fact, I was trying to learn it from a lady from Warm Springs years ago. She helped me and gave me some advice and roots and things. And when I had ulcerative colitis, and I had been on medication for 18 years, she gave me this devil's claw, and I never had another episode. And it's been almost 40 years. I've never had another episode.
Wow.
And it is such a vile uh, disease. And and so I practice teas and roots and plants. I got a pantry full of them. That's my medicine cabinet. And I told the doctors, don't talk to me about pills. Just tell me what the problem is, and I will find something to take that is going to make my body healthy, because I'm not going to do the pills and all of that stuff with the side effects again. And so I think, you know, other cultures are missing out when we're not communicating between indigenous peoples, you know, from different, places, because some know medicines, some know, the earth and maybe, mining or something like that, and doing it without destroying the water. Um, Some know, other particular things. And we would be able to probably be healthier, happier, more sound, more peaceful people if we were communicating with each other's cultures. We would be grasping all of the knowledge and all of the wisdom of the Creator. But there's just been so many things that have happened. It makes it very difficult to say you don't have a reason, to feel the way you feel. Well, okay, then I'm just going to understand that you just don't know what you're talking about. And maybe I need to tell you a few stories, and then we can talk. But I think probably, I think all the time, how can we as individuals and communities, actively create more inclusiveness without being harmed, and more welcoming and respectful spaces so that we can all share. We need to learn from one another.
Yeah, it starts with themselves. Everybody has a responsibility in how they show up in whatever spaces they are, whether it's in a relationship, in a home, at a business, in a community. It starts with self, and it starts with people working on themselves, looking at the mirror, like looking and like, ooh, I don't like that, right? And accepting who you are, loving yourself, trying not to beat ourselves up, heal the past. It's done. So how do I move from here? All of us have been through heartbreak.
Oh,
losing
absolutely.
people, but there's learning. Those relationships we're learning, right? Even like people who've gone to the next plane. We have to start with us.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I'm going to just read this real quickly by Richard. So here it goes. Creator does not tell us who to love, only that we learn how. Love is spiritual. It comes from the spirit place. There is no color there, no gender, no skin, no history, no time, no right, no wrong, no better, no best, and certainly no politics. It's a place of pure love. It is our common home, and we all return to it someday. So it's our soul's mission to learn love. Remember that we spring from love, and hold your loved ones close. When you trust your life to Creator and become willing to take the next indicated step, all matter of miracles become possible. I remain in slack-jawed wonder at the richness of my life.
Oh, that's a beautiful poem. And that is the last word to close our show. Thank you so much for being with us today, Vicki. And thank you, everyone that tuned in. And please join us again next week at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time at A Sharp Outlook. And whatever you do, stay informed. I want to thank you for joining us on A Sharp Outlook. We have been informed and energized to take the next steps. We have posted links to websites and videos to learn more on today's topic. Please join us again next week for another thought-provoking conversation right here on K4 HD Radio and Talk 4 TV. Listen to the podcast on all the podcast apps. And until next week, stay informed.